You're watching Times Now, the most comprehensive coverage of the war in West Asia. And here's some breaking input that we are tracking on top of 5 p.m. Pawan Khera of the Congress Party viewers had put out a post where the Congress Party alleged that the ships which the government claimed were carrying LPG were not meant for India. He claimed that the fuel on board was headed to Jackson's in the United States and pointed out that the ships had sailed out of Qatar under Indian flags. Now, that post has been deleted. The government has come out and clarified. And here are the facts. The oil ministry has confirmed that the 2 Indian flagged vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz and that the LPG on board is destined for Kandla port and Mundra port. Yes, it is coming to India. Now, this clarification puts the Congress in a spot, and this is not the first time that we've seen a misinformation of this kind. We had a situation where the Congress leaders, including Rahul Gandhi, had been saying that there is LPG shortage, only to be fact-checked by one of their own. A Telangana minister went on record to say that there is no LPG shortage. Now listen to what the government has said about these 2 India-bound ships. Okay, we'll play out that reaction in just a bit, but let me quickly bring in our guest, Brahma Chalani. Needs no introduction. He is now joining us. Sir, good evening. Before we do a deep dive, what do you make of, the domestic political commentary, sir?
I don't want to get drawn into the partisan debate in the country. Today, India is facing an important challenge, a very pressing challenge. There is an energy import squeeze because of the fact that the Strait of Hormuz is virtually closed. So that requires India to use its diplomatic outreach to Iran to get the tankers through that critical waterway. And this is what India has managed. It managed to get these 2 LPG tankers through Hormuz, and several oil tankers also have been cleared by Iran to clear the strait and head to Indian ports. So this is all good news for India because of the fact that the domestic situation was threatening to become quite serious. And I think such diplomatic efforts at the highest level, the Prime Minister called the Iran's president, that's how the deal was reached. And right. I think it goes to show that first, that diplomacy can do a lot of things, which, without diplomacy, you wouldn't have been able to get these tankers through. And also it underscores one other important aspect, Pranesh, which is that for India, in terms of India's long-term interests, genuine neutrality and an independent foreign policy are essential. This is just one example of how neutrality and independence are so vital for India's interests. And I think it's very important for India not to be seen as tilting toward one side or the other.
You are underlining neutrality. There are many, Professor Chalani, and I'm not going to be taking names, who've in the last few days said that, look, our foreign policy has not been up to the mark. We'll talk about it, but let's play out the reaction I was talking about. This is the government confirming that these 2 LPG tankers are India-bound.
जैसा मैंने कल बताया था, स्ट्रेट ऑफ होर्मुज के वेस्ट में, पर्शियन गल्फ में 24 भारतीय फ्लैग वेसल्स थे. उसमें से 2 वेसल शिवालिक और नंदा देवी, ये भारतीय इंडियन फ्लैग वेसल थे. शिवालिक और नंदा देवी ये एलपीजी कैरी करते हैं, एलपीजी कैरियर्स हैं. इन्होंने आज अर्ली मॉर्निंग, देर रात में अर्ली मॉर्निंग स्ट्रेट ऑफ होर्मुज क्रॉस किया सेफली और ये भारतवर्ष की तरफ बढ़ रहे हैं. इनमें करीब 92,700 मेट्रिक टन एलपीजी है और इनका अराइवल पोर्ट मुंद्रा और कांडला होगा और इनकी एक्सपेक्टेड अराइवल डेट्स 16 मार्च और 17 मार्च होंगी क्रमानुसार.
So without taking names, and Major General Rajan Kochar also joining the broadcast, but Professor Chalani, without taking names, I just want to say that this individual is the former foreign secretary, a high-ranking diplomat, has been a high-ranking diplomat. And I'm sure you're aware of what he has been saying that our silence is not in our interest. Silence diminishes value of your voice.
Pranesh, if you are referring to someone's comment about India's silence over the US assassination of Iran's supreme leader, who was not just the religious leader of Iran, but also the head of state, our silence on that issue is not conducive to our own interest, because we should not allow normalization of assassination of foreign leaders by any country. If that becomes the norm in international relations, there will be chaos in international relations. Think of how the West will react if Russia were to assassinate Zelensky tomorrow. Would that become acceptable? The way the US assassinated Ayatollah Khomeini was something that militated against international norms. And I think it took us 5 days even to send the foreign secretary to the embassy of Iran to offer condolences, to sign, in fact, the condolence book, which was a good step. But I think we should have at least, without criticizing the US, we should have offered condolences at the outset. We have not even offered condolences, by the way, Pranesh, over the death of so many Iranian sailors in the American attack on Dina, the Iranian frigate, which happened in India's maritime backyard. It's one thing not to criticize the US for the thing, not even to express sadness or offer condolences over the killing of so many sailors, 84 at least, who were guests of India and who were returning. At least we could have expressed some sadness, offered some condolences over the killings of these guests. And I think if that former foreign secretary was referring to this kind of silence, I think he has a point.
Okay, but then, Professor Chalani, people watching this broadcast and, you know, the points that you've made, they will ask you, or they would want to know, why is the government silent then on these two specific instances? Like you said about the, you know, the frigate incident. Even I am of the opinion, and I am no expert, that at least we should have expressed concern that this is happening in India's backyard. I understand international waters, etc. But even that did not come through. Why do you think the government is adopting this stance?
Pranesh, you are a very good actor, and you're asking an excellent question. The government thinks that this matter is so sensitive that silence is better. But I think overcaution can be detrimental to our foreign policy interests. And at least when it comes to caution, we should not overlook simple humanity. For example, offering condolences over the death of so many sailors who were the guests of India, who saluted the President of India at the ceremony in Visakhapatnam. We could have at least done that. And I think the government in more recent days has sought to correct that mistake. For example, now there is outreach to Tehran. The External Affairs Minister has spoken with his counterpart multiple times, at least 5 or 6 times. The Prime Minister himself called Iran's president and spoke with him. Probably he may have even offered condolences over the assassination of Ayatollah Khomeini. All this is very good. And I think that now the government realizes the importance of diplomatic outreach to Tehran, because after all, the Gulf is so important for us. The Gulf countries, the GCC countries plus Iran are critical to India's long-term interests. For example, the GCC countries alone contribute 38% of global remittances from overseas Indians. And also, we depend so heavily on these Gulf countries for our oil and gas import needs. Therefore, while it's okay to not to criticize the American war of aggression against Iran, if that's what the government of India thinks is prudent, it's okay. But we shouldn't go overboard. We shouldn't be overcautious. We should safeguard our interests. Our interests call for genuine neutrality and an independent foreign policy. Those two elements are central to India's long-term core interests.
Okay, you spoke about overlooking humanity, but Professor Chalani, I don't think that on that front that there are any lacuna, so to say, because immediately the Navy responded to the request, and the points that you've underlined after that in the last few days, at least in the last couple of days. Now we are also repatriating those who were stranded here, who took shelter here, so to say. Major General Kochar, what do you make of the developments and the diplomatic outreach or the lack of it?
Thank you, Pranesh. And I've just heard Mr. Chalani also. Some valid points have emerged in this discussion. Diplomatic, first I would say that Iran is equally important to us as the other countries in the Middle East. Because in this current war, we have seen that there has been a situation where we need to talk to Iran. And in the last 5 days, I think External Affairs Minister has spoken to his counterpart 4 times. And Prime Minister Modi has spoken to President Pezeshkian once. It clearly indicates that the channel and the lines of communication are open with Iran, which is a very welcome sign. And a result of that diplomacy has been that 2 of our ships have been released and 26 are still waiting there. So I would like to see what is the response of Iran on the balanced 26 ships being dispatched from there. The second point is, I think there has been a bit of a damage control exercise. I tend to agree with Mr. Chalani when he says that initially the condolence took us, 7 days. And on the 5th of March, our foreign secretary went to the embassy of Iran to sign the condolence book. And possibly I would have appreciated, though I'm not a diplomatic expert or anything like that, but I would have appreciated if our own Prime Minister would have sent a word of condolence himself, because it's the head of the state involved, and last Prime Minister visited Iran was on 23rd of May 2016. And a very landmark achievement of that visit was the sealing of the Chabahar deal, and a $500 million investment.
No, of course, all of that is recorded, sir. So there's no problem between bilateral relations between New Delhi and Tehran. But this damage control, I don't know. Professor Chalani, was it damage control, or like what many believe that diplomatic strategy is ever evolving, it is dynamic in nature? Should we call it damage control?
Well, see, the way this war has unfolded, it's clear first that Trump miscalculated. His rationale for waging this war on Iran have kept shifting, and even the objectives as defined by him tend to shift almost every day. This is the first time, the US has invaded so many countries in my long career. But this is the first time where the US has initiated war without being clear as to what the rationale is and what the objectives are. And what the world is now experiencing is cascading consequences. The global economy is being held hostage by this US-Israeli war on Iran. India's own economy is being held hostage due to this war. And I think now there is sobering realization in New Delhi that if this war were to continue even for 1 more month, it will not just constrict our economic growth, it could create serious energy crunch in the country. And that's the reason why India has belatedly sought to, sought to reach out to Tehran.
Diplomatic outreach.
Yes, diplomatic outreach, and reach out to Tehran and ensure that its interests are safeguarded. This is a very important step, and I think it's a good step because the way, we are only talking about the 2 LPG tankers. In fact, Iran has cleared several Indian tankers, not just the 2. The
right.
2 have already crossed the Hormuz, and others are in the process of safely crossing Hormuz with Iran's cooperation. This will help to alleviate the energy crunch in India. It will also open the path to negotiating further safe passage for additional oil and gas tankers. And I think this is all very good news for Indian consumers and for Indian industries, because last week there was a shock that in an economy was administered. Suddenly, nobody realized that that we are facing an energy crunch, and the way the stock markets crashed last week. Next week, hopefully.
Right. Professor Chalani, let's quickly turn our attention. I want to talk to you about Donald Trump and his war strategy, so to say. Do you believe that this is now, going the Vietnam way?
There's a real danger because, as you know, just yesterday, the U.S. has confirmed that it has ordered Marine forces from Japan to get to position in the Middle East against Iran. That's how that's how the Vietnam War became a ground offensive. The Americans similarly moved Marine forces, and then the U.S. got entangled in an endless ground offensive in Vietnam. It's so much easier to start a war than to end it. We are at a critical juncture now. Trump realizes that this war is not going his way. For example, the regime change goal, that has, in his own words, dissipated. He says now regime change is not possible. Iranians are not ready. He just said that yesterday, right?
Right.
So the very goal that he had initially, he now admits publicly that that goal is not,
right. So
cannot be
two
realized.
things you're saying, Professor Chalani: no exit strategy and no clear objectives. And, and if the ground offensive does indeed happen, then the US is staring at some serious trouble. Is it also to do with the asymmetric warfare?
The asymmetric warfare, Pranesh, is because two very powerful militaries, the US and Israel, are attacking a very weak country, a country that actually, whose only deterrence comes from two aspects. One, strong political will, which is very strong. Resistance has been remarkable. And the second is that this country, which doesn't have a modern air force, whose air defenses are virtually non-existent, is relying basically on its own drones and ballistic missiles. It is showing how a country that has been under heavy sanctions for decades now can build formidable drone and missile capabilities to wage asymmetric warfare. And because the way the war has unfolded, the way the Americans and the Israelis have attacked Iran, Iran's only counter can be asymmetric. It cannot be symmetrical. Because otherwise, if it were to be symmetrical,
then it is asking for trouble.
Yeah. Well, Iran would suffer even greater.
I understand.
Greater havoc.
Yeah, Major General Kocher, people are talking about, high costs, low gains for America. How do you see this ending?
Okay, that's a question which I don't think anybody can answer today. The reason is, I'll tell you why. There has been a very strong miscalculation on the part of Donald Trump in the prosecution of this war. he has misjudged the extent to which Iran was prepared. He has misjudged to the extent that his underground facilities were very well developed. His entire manufacturing takes place 100 meters under the ground. And this has happened over a period of time with the tacit support of Russia and China. Today, Iran has prepared itself for a long onslaught. So if you're asking me the time, Iran is prepared because I can see the kind of strikes Iran is still doing at all the vital areas. It has specific intelligence information from the Russian satellites.
But General Saab, do you see a face saver that can perhaps compel is not quite the word, convince Donald Trump to take a step back?
You see, only face saver I see in the form of Putin coming into this negotiation now, because I believe Russia has made a couple of statements today also, yesterday also. And I think if Russia comes in at this stage and possibly because Putin also wants to exit. You see, he already declared day before yesterday that he has won the war. So he is giving strong strategic messages and signaling that he too wants to end the war, but he needs a passage to exit.
Let's see how this unfolds in the next few days or in the days to come. Professor Brahma Chalani, General Kochhar, thank you for joining us on Times Now.